Good morning, everyone. This is my travel journal sketchbook tour that I have promised that I'll be doing today. So to give you a brief introduction, I spent a month traveling across the islands of Hawaii. The islands were Oahu, Kauai and Maui, and I'm here to talk about my time on those islands a little bit as an artist and as a designer, because I've done a nice recording of what we discovered and what we explored in these islands, and it's all in this very thick book. So let's open up and have a little look inside. So I'm actually gonna skip a bit at the start because it wasn't in Hawaii. So I'm kind of got this minimal style at the moment and a really worn style. I'm really into journals and sketchbooks at the moment. So this first page was just some paper that I found in my cupboard, and it's kind of like the mark of the beginning of my time there. So this is Oahu. We stayed really near to Waikiki. This was our morning view. Every time we woke up, we had this incredible sunset, and we travelled for about 36 hours non-stop to get to Oahu. It was a long journey, and when we woke up in the morning, because we arrived in Oahu at night, this was the first view we saw, and it was one that we saw every day. We stayed in Oahu for around, I think it was 10 days, maybe longer, and this was kind of just first impressions. The first time I saw your wilderness in the jungle, the first time I felt your wet at Moanoan Falls, I stretched out my arms, my eyes, my heart, my soul, you brought me to tears, and that was when we travelled to Manoa Falls, and I have pictures of that in here. That was just a short extract from this side here. Let's have a look at the next page. So whilst I was along the road, I found lots of found items, and noticeably there was a Japanese newspaper. They really cater a lot to Japanese people there, and I can read a little bit of Japanese, and this was a ticket from when we visited Diamond Head State Monument. I really liked that I didn't really have much, and I purposely didn't pack many art supplies, so I just wanted to kind of find items on the road and stick them in. So yeah, these were a couple of things that I used whilst we were in Oahu. This is the Honolulu Gardens. So this was probably the first time I saw these amazing mountains. When you're in Hawaii, if you ever go to Hawaii, you'll see these towering mountains that lead up into the clouds, and they just disappear, and it looks completely out of this world. It's where the waterfalls begin, that turn into rivers on the way down. The clouds release the water up in the mountains, and you begin to see these waterfalls stretching out in the sky, coming out of the clouds. It's the most abstract thing I think I've ever seen on Earth. And we sat here at the top of this viewpoint for some time, my husband and I, and we just watched the mountains, and it's so quiet and so peaceful. And I've written here, I sit there and stare at you. I watch the egrets fly quietly with no sound, complete freedom in their untouched world in the sky. And it really was, you couldn't get up there, it was completely untouched, and you just see these white birds swirling around the sky up in the mountains, and that world up there is their world. It's really amazing. And this is just playing with exposure here. So this is actually the same picture twice of the mountains. You can kind of see some banana leaf trees down there. Next we went to Kauai. So this little picture was just of Kauai near the beach. So Oahu was really, it was kind of refined for tourists. But Kauai was very wild. It was very quiet. It felt a lot more remote. The trees were sort of hanging into the road. There wasn't much maintenance in and around Kauai. The beaches were very rugged and raw. It felt like real natural earth. It was a beautiful place, and it was definitely, they call it the Garden Island. It's like the green garden island. It's just green everywhere in every direction. This was a small palm tree farm, I think, maybe for palm oil. I'm not really sure. That was just next to where we stayed in Hawaii, in Kauai. This is a sprouting horn, and the blowhole. So the island is made entirely of volcanic rock, and where lava cools, when it hits the water, there are these holes that form, and when the holes form, the tide comes in and it hits the rock, and you hear this like booming noise. It sounds like the island's talking to you, and that's what this was here. That spouting horn. It just makes these incredible noises, and it really does sound like the island is speaking to you. It's amazing. So we went there and had a little look, and that was a really nice day. And Kauai is full of chickens. There's chickens everywhere. It's kind of like, it's almost like their logo now. They've got chickens everywhere. And this was, I think, upon looking back, maybe Kauai was my favourite island, possibly. This is definitely one of my favourite places. This is Hanalei, and if you can see here, this is Lake Paradise. So that's a mountain in the back there. And this place was a beach, and it was really near a school, and this mountain had waterfalls like the ones that I spoke about before. And these mountains were amazing. So there was a school nearby to this, and the kids would finish school and come out of the school, and this was a river. So this is the river that comes down the mountain and goes into the sea. And if you swim here, the water's brackish water, so it's when the salt water meets the fresh water. So you've got this really cool river water that's freezing cold, whilst also swimming in this bath water, which is the Hawaiian Pacific Ocean. And the two meet, so you have these pockets of really cold water when you're swimming, and it's freezing, and then suddenly it will feel really warm. It was a really odd thing. And we sat here for hours. This was actually one of my favourite places. I think if I ever lived in Hawaii, it would be here. And this, I saw this, I was kind of exploring on my own at this point. This was a beautiful palm tree leaf on the sand, and I just, well, I mean, look at that light. That was really special for me that time, actually, because I was on my own, and I've never travelled alone. I wasn't on my own, I was still with my husband, but I was just exploring an area of the beach on my own. And I think it's really important to actually take time and just be by yourself, as well as be, you know, in company with others. And I found these really rare sea beans, which I actually can't keep. I had to leave them all, which pained me so much. If you don't know, sea beans are seeds that come from the Amazon, so they float down the rivers of the Amazon, and there were 7 on this beach, and they're so rare, and I couldn't leave my eyes when I saw one, and then continued to find more until I ended up with 7. They look like a conker, they're very small, but that was a really special time for me. So this is also Hanalei. This was a very special tree, but I'm going to leave that as a secret. Can't give everything away. And this was an area where you went around the river bend, and there were loads of tiny fish here, and I just sat and watched the fish swim. And this is the view at Hanalei. It was incredible. It just, you can see why they call it the Garden Island. I don't really need to explain. So yeah, that was Honolulu. And this is now Maui. So again, this area here was the Needle, they called it. It's a very high up point, and when there was war in Hawaii, people used to flee up to this very tall mountain here, and flee basically for safety. And I read a little extract here. Swam in the water, it began to rain, it was warm, stretched my arms out and gave thanks to the sun, the earth and the rain and the mountains, the clouds as well, and I smiled. So that is a brief description of my time in the river here. So again, where you'll find mountains, you'll probably find rivers, and there was a river that came down the mountain here, and that was the first time I'd swum in a river, and I've always wanted to do wild swimming, so that was a really special moment. And there was a point where we were in the water and it was so warm and the river, and it started to rain, but it was sunny as well, and just the feeling of it raining, and I just stretched out my arms and looked up to the sky and just said thank you for that moment and being that present moment. And this is the river here. So a lot of boulders, a lot of rocks, and you do have to be really careful when you swim in rivers, because there are a lot of flash floods and you don't know when they're coming. So when it starts to rain where you are, there could be a lot more rain higher up the mountain. There was a time when I was stood on a boulder in a river, and the boulder was maybe 2 meters high, and I stood on the boulder and my husband Sam pointed to the above my head, and there was a tree, and in the tree above my head, so it's about 5 meters up, there was seaweed, not seaweed, like algae and just river debris from where the tree had almost caught it, and this was about 5 meters off the ground. So flash flooding is a really serious danger in Hawaii, and you have to be really mindful when you're getting into the water, whether it's the sea or a river. And last of all, this is again the river. I was very happy, kind of seeing. And I don't know if anybody's reading or have heard of the book Wild. It features Cheryl Strayed, who walked across the PCT in California, and I've been reading this on and off. But I think that was the first time I actually understood what she felt, maybe, when she was on the road and walking the wild on her own, because I really felt wild. And this was a sad day, but a happy day. This was up the mountain in Maui, so this was the last day before we came home, and it was really, really strange because we went up to the top of this mountain and the grass was different, the air was different, and the grass was like the grass that you get in the UK, and it was almost like the moment where Hawaii and the UK kind of met, and it really felt when we were up here that we were already home, because it was raining, it was grey, the grass was the same, it wasn't thick and coarse like the grass you normally get, it was the same grass that you get in the UK. The air was cooler, the temperature was about the same as what you'd feel in the summer, and I think that was like the mark of sort of the beginning of the end of our time in Hawaii. And I did have a little cry up here. It was a happy cry, but it was kind of the realization that it was time to kind of end this adventure and start a new one, and go back home. And this is back home, so we were so desperate to escape when we came home. We rented a little van, and this was the sunrise in the UK in the cold again. So we came back in October, so it was quite cold, quite a shock to the system when we came back, and this was kind of another escape amongst the chaos of being home again. And this is the mark of a new adventure, which is what I'm on now. On to the next adventure, making every moment count, is what I've written here, because one thing that I learnt from Hawaii when I was there is that not to waste any time or put any time into anything that you don't feel passionate about. And I had a lot of feelings about and realizations about my time and what I'm doing. And when you sit there and you observe people and you see that we're all just on our phones, I think it really taught me to slow down and cut out anything that wasn't important to me or I'm not passionate about. And that's something that I really want to carry into the future and be mindful of doing. And maybe I'll leave this part for another time. I hope you enjoyed this. I've got a lot of pictures on my blog about my time in Hawaii. In fact, I'm going to leave you on a nice note. This one. About my time in Hawaii. I have a lot of pictures on the blog. I really appreciate you guys listening to this and for being interested in this, and I hope that it inspires you to go out and have your own adventures and to keep your own journals. And there was a time when I was at home and I felt a bit down about the fact that I wasn't in Hawaii, and just going through this was really special and it brought me back to all those feelings there. And I think it's really important to log everything that you're doing, and so you have things like this to remember. And as I said, like, more of this is on my blog. My blog is roseeadsdesign.com. I've got loads of pictures from Hawaii on my Instagram at roseeadsdesign. I've made a range called the New Moon Collection range, which is a range of art and works inspired by my time in Hawaii. You can find that all on my Etsy at roseeadsdesign. And I really appreciate you guys listening to this. If you're interested in what I'm doing, a subscription or a like would mean so much to me, because it helps me do all of this and being encouraged and motivated to continue to do it, if I know that people like it and love it just like I do. I hope you enjoyed this, and I think you should all now go out and make your own adventures. Thank you for listening. Mahalo.